Hey, okay, I just wanted to do a little addendum here on the federal bureaucracy, and I thought I also mentioned a few things about the Nevada executive branch. So, first things first, the federal bureaucracy. I think really that intro video I've already cut for you guys, that's actually pretty good. So you sort of add that in, right, to the chapter on the federal bureaucracy, although I want to limit the pages that you're responsible for there. So let me get you those limitations. I'll post that on Canvas shortly. Yeah, right, it's the ongoing issue. The Trump administration has raised this issue more than any prior president that I can think of. Right, it's the idea of thinking of unelected federal bureaucrats as the deep state looking to undermine elected officials. At one level, right, that's an old complaint from elected officials because they are the chief executive, in this case the president. The president, right, is chief executive of that entire federal bureaucracy. Depending on how you count it, 3 or 4 million people. If you count all those serving in the armed forces, which they really are federal bureaucrats, right, executing American policy, typically abroad, you get to 4 million. If you don't include the military, it's closer to 3 million. So pick your number there. Although remember, the aggregate of state and local bureaucrats massively dwarfs the number of federal bureaucrats. I think there's way more than 20 million state and local bureaucrats. Quite honestly, people like me, right? I work for the state of Nevada, Clark County School District, all the teachers, teachers' aides, administrators, administrative assistants, all of that, right? They're all state and local bureaucrats. I think the ratio of federal bureaucrat to total national population, I think that's been steadily going down over time. So in that sense, the federal bureaucracy is actually shrinking over time. Rightly or wrongly, good or bad, empirically that appears to be the case. Some people often have a sense of a federal bureaucracy growing by leaps and bounds. It's actually growing slower than our population as a nation state, and significantly so in many years. So those are a few things worth knowing. What else? The deep state, right? Trump keeps raising that as a deep problem, and we need to somehow make sure that all federal bureaucrats bow to the president. That's kind of an extreme version of the unitary theory of the executive branch. Is that what is it Trump said a while back? I'm the only one who matters. That's an extreme vision of the unitary theory of the executive branch. All right, versus the alternative, which is that, hey, you know what? The federal bureaucracy has a certain amount of independence from the president. The attorney general, right, when they take that oath of office, they swear to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution and the laws of the land, not to serve the president. If you're the Secretary of Defense, right? You have an allegiance to the U.S. Constitution, not to the president. And also, right? If you're Secretary of Defense, right? You're going to start to, from the very beginning, you'll be very concerned about the well-being of your own people, right? Those who serve in the various branches of the military here in the United States. So you're going to feel a certain allegiance to the men and women of the armed forces, right? You're going to feel the need to make sure that you take care of what Congress is concerned about, because Congress signs your damn paycheck and provides the budget to the military, right? Interest groups are going to be seeking to influence you as Secretary of Defense, those companies that make hardware for the military. So you're serving many masters when you're the Secretary of Defense. Same for any of those other federal bureaucracies, the highest level of leadership. Yes, they're appointed by the president, right? But they serve, protect, and defend a wide variety of constituents, and most obviously the U.S. Constitution. That would be more of a pluralistic theory of the executive branch. So yeah, the president matters a very great deal, but they're not the only one who matters. Other actors also matter a very great deal, at least in a democracy. So, right, Trump continues to test that theory to see how far he can take it. Excuse me. And in a way, right, aren't we seeing how important it is to have good people in the deep state, the federal bureaucracy, people who were hired based on knowledge, competence, qualifications, resume, experience, right? Because they're the ones who can provide us good advice in times of like this during a pandemic. You know, if we were only going by what Trump decided each morning that he woke up, my God, right? Fortunately, right, what he wants each morning, that's being tempered by experts around him. Could Trump completely ignore them? Sure, he could, but even he has found it hard to do that consistently. So he's not getting total allegiance from the federal bureaucracy, and damn it, man, that's a good thing. That's part and parcel of a democratic government. The president is not the only one who matters, and the president doesn't have total authority, and there are other centers of power at the federal level, even within the executive branch. Right, so stuff to know about that and think about. Yeah, Dr. Fauci, just to name the obvious, right? Trump can fire him if he wants to. I think it'll be damaging to Trump politically if he did, so therefore he's not. Because we know that Fauci, right, has often said, well, Trump said this, but what he really meant was this, and Trump said this, but we need to think about that, and yeah, Fauci's done a nice job of, right, not completely pissing off the president, but also trying to maintain fidelity to the truth, science, best practices, and so forth. So, yeah. What else? The Nevada executive branch, right? It is a plural executive branch. We have 6 elected officials statewide at the within the executive branch in Nevada. I think that's true probably of all of our states, some version of that. So we have the governor, right? But we also have the lieutenant governor elected separately, the attorney general elected separately, on and on through those 6 different positions. That's to limit executive authority, right? Make sure it's not just in one person. The governor definitely has preeminent authority within the executive branch. The attorney general is a close second. After that, a little bit less authority. So certainly the governor matters the most within the Nevada executive branch, but other actors also matter a great deal. Again, especially the attorney general. And do we see, in the context of this pandemic, that governors have, in a crisis, right, sort of John Locke's executive prerogative theory, that during extraordinary times, executive leadership can do extraordinary things. We're seeing that, right, in Nevada and in other states where governors are issuing executive orders mandating lockdowns for a certain period of time. And we know now that despite Trump's grossly overblown claims of having total power over reopening America, again, whatever that means exactly, it turns out even he has conceded, oh yeah, I'm going to let the governors do what they want to do, but I'll be, keeping a close eye on them and making sure they're doing what I want them to do, which is, again, just chest beating and bluster. So yeah, the governors are in control here, not the president. I thought the president kind of took a pass on this whole thing from the beginning, other than banning travel from China. He's been kind of a little bit missing in action. So that's fine, because the governors were willing to step up and fill the vacuum. But Trump can't suddenly jump back in and say, oh yeah, I'm back. And they're like, nah, you weren't here when we really needed you, and so we're doing just fine without you. We'll do this at the state and regional level. Probably for the best. All right. So yeah, we've seen here that, the governor position in Nevada is potentially a very powerful one. Some governors have been more powerful than others. Sandoval, recently departed Republican governor. He was frickin' legendary and iconic for Nevada. He was quite powerful. Guy before him was Jim Gibbons, also Republican. He was a damn disaster. He brought discredit to the office and was very weak. He was in over his head. Sisolak, he's still sort of writing his own story here, but he appears to be a relatively powerful governor as well. Roughly like Sandoval. And probably not coincidental that Sandoval was a moderate Republican. Sisolak is a conservative Democrat. So those two really ideologically aren't so different and are using that kind of bipartisan centrist position to provide pretty strong leadership. Yeah, it's time some of my peeps back in Wisconsin. I think the reason Wisconsin today has such incredibly toxic politics is because while we were busy electing Brian Sandoval as a moderate Republican with bipartisan appeal, they were electing Scott Walker, rigid ideologue, deeply conservative, burn down the government Republican. So Walker had his day in the sun, right, for 8 years, and then he got kicked out in that third election cycle for him. And he did not. He took no prisoners. Democrats are evil. I'll never work with Democrats. So right now in Wisconsin, you kind of reap what you sow, right? So in Wisconsin, you have deeply divided politics. Republicans hate Democrats and vice versa. Nevada took a different road. I think it's put us in a pretty good situation today with a pretty centrist executive branch, and it's a pretty bipartisan relationship between our two parties for the most part these days. We're doing pretty well on that count compared to other states like Wisconsin. All right, I talked too much as per usual. Thanks all. Catch you on the flippity flip.